Frank Gaffney joins me now, the founder and president of the Center for Security Policy. Frank, I think like you, I was very unhappy at the release of Johnny Taliban, or John Walker Lindh, from prison, even though he had actually served his time minus good time over 17 years. But it raised the question that you addressed when you suggested maybe if we require convicted sex offenders to put their names in registries so we can track where they are and keep an eye out for the threat, then maybe we should have convicted terrorists do the same thing.
Yeah, let me just say, Lars, before turning to that really important point, that it is a little unclear to me when the guy was still advocating for violent jihad, at least as recently as 2016,
Yep.
how good his behavior could possibly have been, let alone how advisable it is to turn him loose on society, which brings us to this question of just basic common sense, enabling communities around this country to know, at the very minimum, their law enforcement personnel, when a jihadist, an unreconstructed terrorist, has been allowed to, relocate from a criminal facility like a federal penitentiary to one of their neighborhoods. This is something that, as you say, we have done now for some time. I think pretty much across the country, if not everywhere. Though you never know about those sanctuary cities, do you? To sex offenders. But we're beginning now to see a number of people who have been convicted of terrorism getting out of jail. And that's not even to say the people that have converted to jihad while they're in jail. These are the people who went in and were doing time for having tried to kill, or actually in some cases killed people.
Well, I kind of wonder too, Frank, because even if somebody like John Walker Lindh manages to stay on the right side of the law technically, imagine what a lightning rod he might be for recruiting jihadists. Remember that Adam Gaddan's value to the movement wasn't so much how many bullets he could shoot out of a rifle, but his ability to capture the attention of Americans because he was an American and joined the this jihad movement. I wonder whether or not Lynn couldn't do the same thing. Maybe he'll have to wait till the end of his 3 years of probation is over. But imagine if he goes out and begins speaking. He could probably dance pretty close to the line of trying to incite people to undertake violent acts without crossing over it and stay safely in that First Amendment territory.
Well, here's another wrinkle in it. As you say, he is on probation for 3 years, and during that period, he's not supposed to be on the Internet in an unsupervised way. But what about going to a mosque?
Yeah.
What about going specifically to the kind of mosque that he would feel most comfortable in, which is to say, a Sharia supremacist mosque? We've indulged in a conceit about radicalization, as it's been called, Lars, that suggests that the only way people get radicalized as jihadists is that they somehow learn about, ISIS or Al-Qaeda or one of these kinds of groups through the Internet. Well, that ain't necessarily so. And I'm not suggesting that all mosques preach violent jihad or even the stealthy kind. But I am saying that the ones that have been set up and operated by the Muslim Brotherhood are Sharia supremacist mosques. And those are the kind, and they're all over the country, unfortunately, those are the kind in which you're likely to find John Walker Lindh not only very much at home, but a rock star. And that goes to your point. This is a guy who would almost certainly be considered a great recruiter for the jihadists as they seek to bring other people, radicalized people, to the fight.
No, I agree with you. And that's what I'm thinking of, that this is the person who could end up being the inspiration for others. And I would imagine these days, It probably hasn't always been this way, but would you imagine that if he goes into a mosque and wants to speak privately about desires for jihad or desires to see the United States attacked, he's going to enjoy probably a considerable level of privacy inside of there, isn't he? Because of today's view toward Islam.
Well, it depends, I guess, on where he's doing this. But, for example, in New York City, Mayor de Blasio, in his infinite wisdom, agreed to a settlement that essentially assured that there aren't going to be any prying eyes from the NYPD inside those mosques. So I'm not even sure he'd need that much of a private space, honestly.
Well, it'd certainly be.
Let's just say he wanted it, he could get it.
He could get it. And on the other hand, if you say, we know that if somebody wants to go to the amount of time and effort to look up John Walker Lindh, get a picture of him, I know what he looks like. But then you have to know, is he living just down the street from you? And what kinds of things might he be talking to other people about, even if he's not planning to do anything personally? I think if we figure that it's valuable to let the public know about convicted sex offenders in their midst, knowing about convicted terrorists might be just as important, if not more so.
I would argue considerably more so, because horrible as what sexual predators do is, generally speaking, they don't kill you. And these guys do.
Absolutely right. Frank, keep up the good work, and we appreciate your time and effort. Oh, by the way, I'm going to talk about this in a moment, but you and I both know United States Representative Duncan Hunter of California. And now there's some in the media who are making a big deal about the fact that he had a photo taken with a dead combatant, meaning a dead jihadi, during his time as a Marine, and they're going after him for that. Do you think, A, that's that unusual for service members to have those kinds of photos? He didn't post it to the internet or social media, and now they're going after him, criticizing him for that. What's your take on that?
Oh, Lars, there have been people who've been prosecuted by the U.S. government, the military specifically, for taking photographs with dead jihadis. It doesn't offend me, I have to tell you, but the rules of engagement under which these guys have been operating, I think, preclude it, and he may get trouble for that.
Well, unfortunately, I think you're right. But if you ask, if you ask service members, and I've asked them before when this has come up, I would tell them personally, I'm an American citizen. I'm glad for what you did in uniform, and I don't find it that unusual that occasionally you take a photo like that saying these are the bad guys who tried to kill them, and we defeated them. And frankly, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Frank, thanks so much. That's Frank Gaffney from the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C.